Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel, founder of a revolutionary medical sales training and mentorship program called the Medical Sales Career Builder, and I'm also host of the Medical Sales Podcast. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire world. It doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing and diagnostic lab, you name it, you will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 10% performer within your role, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. And remember, I am a medical sales expert sharing my own opinion about this amazing industry and how it can change your life. So, Haley Carswell, let's first of all, why don't you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So thank you. First and foremost, thank you so much for asking me to be on your podcast. Like, I'm super honored. Anytime I get asked to do anything like this, it's kind of like a pinch myself, moment, like, oh my gosh, people think I'm responsible enough to be on a podcast, right? So like the little girl in me is like, wow, you're really a grown up. But I am Haley Carswell. I am a VP of sales for a medical device company. We really focus on non-invasive, non-addictive pain management medical device. For patients, we call on pain management, PT, chiros, orthos, neuros, you kind of name it, we call on them. But yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, let's a lot of people are in medical sales that are hearing this, but a lot of people aren't, Haley. And I want to give them some context. Give us a little bit about what a day in the life looks like for this kind of medical sales professional in this kind of medical sales.
Yeah, that's a great question. My day is dependent upon what my reps need, so I joke a lot of times with my team and with my region, so we're in 3 right now. So I'm VP of the Eastern Seaboard, from Florida all the way up to Maine. So with my reps, I say all the time, like, y'all think y'all work for me. You do not. I work for you. I work for you. So my day to day, normally starting out in the morning, I'm the worst person ever. I check my email like right when I wake up, and like every podcast you ever listen to about like having any sort of sanity is like, don't look at your phone for the first 15 minutes. I absolutely check my email first. So there's that. So I look and see, kind of what's going on. If there's anything that came in last night that I didn't see the day before. And then my day throughout the days are one-on-ones or strategic planning meetings with my upper level management, strategic meetings with some of my groups underneath me, my leadership underneath me, or my regional sales managers, my area sales managers, even my senior TMs, where we can kind of direct what we want to focus on this month, this quarter, this week. And so it's a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of Zoom meetings. And then for me, it's a lot of looking at reports, right? So I look at patterns. I look at trends. Medical device and sales in general is very cyclical. So I look at where we are in the year, where we were compared last year, where we were compared last month, where have we fallen off? Where have we picked up? Where can we pick up? Where are we missing the mark? And so my days are spent on the phone and Zooms and Teams meetings, on emails, and then looking at a bunch of numbers is what it is.
Okay. Your career trajectory is absolutely fascinating. And correct me if I'm wrong, Haley, but you started at Palm Beach Tan.
I did.
What was Palm Beach Tan?
I did.
Tell us exactly what that was.
I did. It's so funny. So, we were talking just a little bit before this. So my path to get here was definitely not linear, right? So I did not grow up thinking I'm going to be in sales. I didn't go to college for sales. I will never forget, I was probably in high school. My dad told me we had a really good family friend whose daughter was in pharma sales. And he's like, you should really look into this. Like, they make good money. Yeah. I've never met a stranger in my life. I've always been a people person, but my dad was also an attorney. And I idolized my father. Like, he hung the moon. He literally hung the moon. You can't tell me otherwise. And so I always wanted to be like my dad growing up. So when I went to school, it was just always going to be that I was going to go to law school. And whenever I ended up graduating from college, I had a conversation with my dad about, taking the LSAT and going to law school. And he was like, Haley, if you're really, really passionate about law, which I was not, But if you're really passionate about law, then do it. But if you're not, he was like, you're going to take the LSAT, you're going to study really hard, you're going to graduate from law school, you're going to work 80, 90 hours a week. You're not even going to make what you owe in law school loans. He's like, why don't you just take some time and kind of figure out what you want to do? And I was like, well, okay, so I got out of school. I was in school in Mississippi. I'm from Georgia originally. I moved back to Georgia. And I was like, well, I just need a job, I got a degree in mass communications because the school that I went to didn't have a pre-law degree. So that was kind of the closest thing for me to go. And so I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And so I just started applying to different places. And so I applied to Palm Beach Tan, which I will say they are the largest national chain of tanning salon businesses throughout the United States. So shout out to Diane Lucas, who is the president and CEO of Palm Beach Tan. She is a boss and quite honestly, one of my idols. Like she took something that was nothing and turned it into something incredible. But I get tickled. I had no experience. I think I worked at a tanning salon like my freshman year in college, like nothing great, but I had no experience. I had really no sales experience. And they hired me as an assistant manager, probably because I was maybe one of the only people that had a bachelor's degree applying for this job. So they're like, management, let's do it. And so that's when I really kind of first started within leadership, but then more so sales. Because what people don't understand about tanning salon chains, it's very much like retail. Right. So yes, people are coming in and they're doing sunless tanning and, UV bed tanning, but where they make their money is products. Right. And so it's like you're selling lotions and packages and all this kind of stuff. And I just remember thinking, if I can convince someone to buy $175 bottle of tanning lotion, I can probably convince somebody to buy anything. Right. And so, and then if I can teach someone to do that, I can probably teach them to buy something that they actually need. And so, I ended up loving it and I worked my way up. I went from assistant manager to store manager to multi-unit store manager to, we had some change. And so I was like, kind of like the pseudo area manager. And then I got, promoted finally. And I was over Atlanta and they moved me to Florida to really try to pick up that market. And I went from, the Florida market was second to last when I took over. And in 3 quarters, we went to number 1. And I was like, this is
okay, wait. So you can't drop that kind of progress and not explain what drove that progress. So talk to us.
Yeah.
I know it was your first option, but how'd you do it?
So wild because I work in medical device, but that's kind of like one of my proudest things. It's so like for starters, and let me give some context, right? So in the tanning industry, you have other salons as your competition. In Florida, you have the beach as your competition, right? Like I was in the panhandle of Florida. I was on 30A. I was in Destin. I was like all Panama City, all those areas. Like that's your competition. But I think this is where I really found my niche with leadership. And this is where I'm so passionate about it. If you can build that rapport and you can build that relationship with the people that you work with, your colleagues, your staff, whatever that you want to refer to them as. I like to refer to them as my colleagues because it keeps me right-sized, right? So with them, if you can kind of build that rapport where they work for you, right? So they're employed by this company, but they people that were technically working underneath me that I was going to get down and sell behind the counter just like they would. If the bathrooms needed to be clean, I was going to do that. If something needed to be mopped, I was going to do that. If somebody was sick and a store needed to be open, that was my responsibility. So I think modeling that behavior allowed this level of trust, between myself and I think I had 12 or 13 stores at the time, between myself and the store managers, assistant managers, and the staff to kind of build this like familial relationship where like I had their back and they had mine. And at the end of the day, like we were going to be number 1, period. Like nobody was going to break us. And so that's what we did. And it was incredible. In the tanning world, we were a force. So
So it's almost like you took on this attitude of full ownership no matter what's going on.
yeah. Oh,
And
absolutely.
that spread to everybody else that worked with you. And because you guys had that mindset, you were able to conquer any obstacle and
Mhm.
drive your success, number one.
Absolutely. And I think, with any sales opportunity or sales, not opportunity, but like any sales job, right? Any sales career, you've got to find the area of opportunity. Where are we missing the mark? And if we can figure out where we're missing the mark, we can capitalize on that and and make that our best asset, right? And so that's what I
I love
did.
it. I love it.
That's what I did there.
I love
So,
it. So Palm Beach Tan to
yeah,
addiction treatment. Well, you
right.
guys, you can't, like, what happened there? Were you were killing it? You're number one. You're district
Yeah.
manager at Palm Beach Tan. What came into your life or your world that said, you know what, I'm taking this to addiction treatment centers?
Yeah. So I'm very, very passionate about, addiction treatment, mental health. I've had some personal experience in my life with people in my life that have suffered from addiction. Just full transparency. My first ex-husband died from an overdose, very, very young. So I've had treatment space. I've always been a very big advocate of mental health and behavioral health, which is what addiction kind of falls underneath. And so my friends for ever, even when I was at Palm Beach, they're like, you need to come work in behavioral health. You need to come work in addiction. You need to come do this. You need to come do that. Like it's sales. It is sales, but you're going in and you're creating that buy-in with psychiatrists, psychologists, kind of stuff like that. And I was like, I don't know. I think at the time for me, it was just a little too personal still. But
Right.
I went through the thing, I went through my time at Palm Beach and I was with them for like 6 or 7 years and I loved it. But there also came a point where I was getting older and my staff was getting younger, and it was like, I was still having to get up and go open the store on a Sunday morning if somebody didn't show up to work, right? And I was like, okay, I'm tired. I don't know if I necessarily want to do that anymore. And so I started reaching out to some of my contacts that worked in behavioral health, and I got an opportunity with an incredible facility that is underneath the umbrella of Acadia Healthcare that focuses on multimodality treatment facility that focuses on primary mental health or dual diagnosis between mental health and addiction, and they focus on trauma. And to me, it was probably the best opportunity, to have to go work for a place like that. And it allowed me to really utilize that rapport building asset that I had learned at Palm Beach, because that's what you're doing. You're going and you're calling on primary caregivers, right? Psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, even
Yeah.
family medicine. And if they had a patient that was
Yeah.
suffering from something underneath that hula hoop and they wanted a higher level of care, they would reach out to me and they trusted me with their patient,
Yeah.
which is a super important job. And so I worked for Acadia for a while. I worked for Summit Behavioral Health for a while, which is another company, incredible mental and behavioral health company focusing on, primary mental health or addiction. And I was very, very blessed to have worked for both of them, and I'm super
Wow.
grateful for it.
Yeah. So something happened when you were working at Palm and that said, I now want to take this to
Yeah.
addiction, or you always had in the back of your mind that you wanted to work in that space?
I I think because it was such a shock to me that I ended up in sales in the first place. I don't even know if I knew what I wanted to do at the time. I just knew that at the time I had outgrown my position or my time at Palm Beach. And
Yeah.
again, I don't want to say anything. I am so incredibly grateful for the leadership that I had there because I'm telling you right now, Diane Lucas, who's
Yeah.
CEO, owner of Palm Beach, my
Yeah.
area manager, I attribute all of my management skills to them. I learned everything I knew about how being a good manager to them. I just outgrew it, and so I knew
Sure.
there was something that I wanted to do, bigger, larger, more of a long-term career. I was also probably in my gosh, I don't know how old was, like early 30s maybe at this point. And I was like, Am I really going to work for a tanning salon chain, up until my 60s? Probably not. Like,
Yeah.
should I find something where a career where I can
Yeah,
retire?
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so that was it.
Okay, so we're doing addiction treatment centers. You went on to the Refugee,
Hmm.
and then Summit BHC.
Yep. Yep.
What happened that medical sales came into your life? Like,
Yeah.
was it a moment? Was it like you saw an ad, or you talked to a friend, or you were at the hospital waiting, you're at the doctor's office and you saw somebody walk in? What give us what happened? I hope you're enjoying today's episode. And I want to let you know our programs cover the entire career of a medical sales professional. From getting into the medical sales industry, to training on how to be a top performer in the medical sales industry, to masterfully navigating your career to executive level leadership. These programs are personalized and customized for your specific career and background, and trained by over 50 experts, including surgeons. Our results speak for ourselves, and we're landing positions for our candidates in less than 120 days in top medical technology companies like Stryker, Medtronic, Merck, Abbott, you name it. Would you run an Ironman race without training?
I look back on it now and it was just like all of like God's timing and everything lining up for me. So this switch happened during COVID, right? So everybody's world
Okay.
was literally just turned upside down during COVID, right? Like,
Yeah.
those of us in
Yeah.
sales,
Yeah.
we're used to one-on-one meetings, like we're
Yeah.
doing in
Yeah.
services, we're doing stuff like that. And all of that changed during COVID. And in the addiction field, I mean, we got really busy, during COVID because people weren't staying at
Yeah.
home and addictions ran rampant. And so it wasn't for lack of, business for me. But I think, just personally, the work was very heavy. It was very, very heavy. And so when you work on the business development and sales side and of addiction treatment, you're not just dealing with the person that suffers with addiction, you're dealing with the families, and it's a 24/7 full-time job. And in the back of my mind, I always remembered my dad telling me, about my family friend that worked in pharma sales, right? And so, I thought, okay, maybe this is something, a switch where it's just not so emotionally draining, for me because, working in addiction and behavioral health, that's a job, in my opinion, unless you can really compartmentalize, which I can't, or you just don't have a heart, you take it home with you every day. And it's just hard and it was heavy and it was weighing on my family
Taxing.
at the time.
Taxing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, it's exhausting. And, so I kept thinking about that. And at the time, my sister-in-law's husband, so my brother-in-law, worked in medical device, surgical sales, incredible guy. Love him. He's great. Had another friend that worked in aesthetic sales, had another friend that worked in lab sales. And so I really started talking to her about, kind of wanting to shift. I loved leadership, but I knew that medical or pharma or lab or whatever was so incredibly hard to get into. So I started networking. I started talking to my brother-in-law. I started talking to her friends. I started talking to other people that worked in either pharma or med device lab. And so by talking to people on her network and my brother-in-law's network, they were like, medical device is your space. Like I don't know what it was about me. For me personally, I think medical device is more personal, right? So it's very relational. I think pharma and no, like at pharma, they're incredible, but I think it's a very quick, it can be a very quick sales cycle. Medical device, you've got to really build that relationship. And they were like, stick to medical device for you. And so I started looking and I was applying and applying and applying and applying. And because people aren't really familiar with the behavioral health and addiction space, it was hard for me to translate what I did on my resume,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And, and I love I love medical advice. And this is why I answer people when they reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's like, it's an entry level position, but they want 10 years of experience. Right. So it's like, what the heck, like, what am I supposed to do to get there?
Right. Right.
And so, Zynex had a position open for a regional sales manager. And I was like, this is literally the best of both worlds, right? Because we focus on non-addictive, non-invasive pain management options for patients, that are living with chronic pain or post-op pain. So we're not saying that, opioids, don't have a place in medicine, because they absolutely do. We're just saying
Sure.
we can help lessen, the use of opioids. We can use it in conjunction. We can help taper off with these pain management devices. So it combined something that I was already doing and super passionate about with what I had found out through my career that I was really good at, which was leading a team.
Yeah.
And so I applied, and no one was more shocked than me when I got an email back and they were like, we want to move forward with an interview. And I was like, oh my God, we made it,
And
and that was it.
It knocked their socks off.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't tell you how many no's I got before I got that
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. No, it's
So,
real. It's real. I mean, it's very real. And now, I mean, gosh, that was back in COVID.
yeah,
Now
it's
it's
2020. Mhm.
20 times more competitive than it's ever been.
It's
Everybody
insane.
wants to get into your space. It is insane. It's to the point now where we say, you need guidance, you need a strategy, you need a coach, you need a program or something to give you
Yeah.
some, not just to have the strategy to get into a position, but the wherewithal and consistent motivation to get up every day and still go after it. So
Absolutely.
But-
It is a full-time job for sure. Trying to get a job in this industry.
What truly impresses me though about your career tracks, Haley, is within 5 years, you went from a regional sales manager to vice president of sales for the East.
Yeah.
You gotta, of course, there's a whole world of information you can provide around how that happened. Let's speak specifically to those people listening right now that are sales reps. And they're like, I really want to get to second line leadership. What the heck? How do I make this happen? What should I focus on? What should I consider? How should I be showing up in my role? Who should I be talking to? If you condense your experience, please share with us what those points would be.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. But quite honestly, I think people overcomplicate how to get here. So, number one, and this is a term that I almost don't like because I think people overuse it and they don't really understand what it is, but be a servant leader. So, like I said earlier, I say to my region all the time that they don't work for me, that I work for them. And I'm sure that some of them joke and laugh because technically I'm the quote unquote boss. But in this position, in order to be successful, that's the mentality and mindset that you absolutely have to be successful. My one job is to make them better. That's it. End of story, period, nothing else. My one job is to make them the best that they could possibly be in whatever role they're in, whether they're just a territory manager, senior territory manager, area manager, regional manager. My job is to make them better. In order for me to make them better, I've got to take me out of the situation and focus purely on them.
So how does somebody exercise that as a current rep right now? You're in a senior position. So being a servant leader to your people is something you can just do. But if someone was to say, okay, I'm gonna adapt that today, how should they start showing up? What should they be doing?
So I encourage my team to reach out to their team members, right? So if you were looking at straight logistics, right? The amount of people that report to me directly or report to, the layers of management, like it's insane, right? I think the military says that the optimal number is like 7 to 1. Okay, well, we blow that out of the water at Zynex, right? So we've got to really lean on each other. And so if you're a rep, if you're a territory manager, and you're in a singular position, right? The way that you show up is that you show up for your teammates. We have a group text. We have a whole group text with our region. And then I know there's subgroup text within the region, maybe it's state-wise or whatever. And we use those platforms for questions. If you want to be a servant leader as a territory manager and you have 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 5 years more than the territory manager that's answering the question, you answer it. You show up, you answer it, you volunteer, you help. At Zynex, what we do is we do everything by zip codes, right? But I'll use Atlanta as an example. I base out of Atlanta, and it's probably the area that I know the most because I'm from there. We have multiple reps in Atlanta that share providers, right? Or they need help, or they're younger, or they haven't been, in the industry as long, and you've been there longer. You go and you do an in-service with them.
Haley, this was a true treat having you on the show today. Thank you again for all the wisdom you left with us. And we got to do this again. And I can't wait to see the amazing things you continue to do in your career. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a customized and personalized program that gets you into the medical technology industry as a sales professional, or any type of role for that matter. Become a top performer in your position and masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolvesuccess.com by visiting our site, filling out an application, schedule some time with one of our account executives, and allowing us to get you where you need to be. Stay tuned for more awesome content, amazing interviews on the Medical Sales Podcast.